Advaitaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayana Swayam Yasena Gratitam Puranamuna Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitam Ritaharshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashaധ്യായിനിം Ambattvamanusantatami Bhagavad Gite Bhavatveshini Namostute Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Pullara Vindayata Padranetra Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purnaha Prajvalito Jnanamaya Pratipara Prapanna Parijataya Totraiveikaikapanaye Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Gitam Letaduhe Namaha Sarvopanishado Gavaha Dogda Gopalanandana Parto Vassa Sudhir Bhokta Duktam Gitam Ritam Mahat Vasudeva Sutam Devam Tam Sachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Bhishma Drona Tata Jayadratachala Gandhara Nilotpala Shalyagrahavati Kripeha Vahani Karnena Belakula Ashvathama Vikarna Ghora Makara Duryodhana Vartini Sotirna Kalu Pandavai Rananadi Kaivartaka Keshavaha Parasharyavachas Sarojamamalam Gītārthagandhotkatam Nānākhyanakachisharam Harikatha Sambodhana Bodhitam Loke Sajjana Shatpadairaharaha Pepiyamanam Muda Bhuyat Bharata Pankajam Kalimala Pradvam Sinashrigase Mukhaṁ karoti vācālam Pangul langhayate girim Yatkripatamaham vande Paramanandamadhavam Yam brahma varunendra rudra marutaha Stunvanti divyaistavaihi Vedai sangapadakramopaniषदैहि Gayanti yam samagaha Dhyanavasthita tadgatena manasa पश्यन्ति यं योगिनः यस्यान्तन्न विदुःसुरासुरगणाः देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै नमः. Continuing with our story. That's what history is all about. There is story in history. Yeah. Except it's also about him and her. Yes. So, we have these growing in the same household, in the same palace hold. What? These two families. This is where I suppose the idea for the nuclear family arose, having relatives like Duryodhana. And so he was making their life so much hell that they, for a brief period, they had split the kingdom into two, because he was constantly troubling them. It was the same kingdom but with two different capitals. And here too he gave the Pandavas the short end of the stick. He gave them a land which was arid, difficult to do anything. It had no resources whatsoever. Deserted land. And that region was called Indraprastha. Then the Pandavas ruled it so nicely that it all became green within a few years, because they ruled it dharmically. And then after it became nice and green and started to yield and rich and started to yield revenue, they wanted it back. Who? The baddies. And so like this, these things were continuing. And of course this whole Draupadi's disrobing in the Sabha was the last straw, really. And even then they wouldn't stop, because Duryodhana kept saying, I should take off Draupadi and live happily ever after. All 100 of us should live happily ever after with Draupadi and the kingdom forever. And even here the blind king Dhritarashtra, even though he was watching everything mutely, said, no, this doesn't sound right. Even though that was perhaps the first time he mildly went against his sons. Shut up, Dad. Duryodhana said, you don't know anything. And everybody, all the elders said, this, what happened was not good. This was not right. She shouldn't have been, treated like this. And Draupadi ran and cried in Dhritarashtra's lap, because after all he was an uncle to her. And Dhritarashtra promised her that, you will rule the kingdom again, and your husbands will be reinstated, Yudhishthira will be reinstated. He said that. But he didn't make any amends, he didn't do anything to further that. He promised her, because he was overcome by her predicament. And then what happened was that they came up with, nobody could agree, because this Duryodhana was not budging. They said, let the status quo continue, let them go back to Indraprastha. Forget that this game of dice ever happened. And Shakuni, who had spent so much time putting lead in the dice, he said, no, we can't forget this game. This is, we have to honor. There is a dharma in the game. Who is talking? Mama, who doesn't know the meaning of dharma. He's the one who loaded the dice. And then he says, oh, we have to keep the dharma of the game. And so Shakuni and Duryodhana were not budging, and on the other hand the group of elders, they were also not budging from this whole thing, this fiasco. Then finally Shakuni came up with a bright idea. He thought himself also an elder because he belonged to the uncle category. And what was the bright idea? After this disastrous game of dice, they should play one more game. The first game itself was a bad idea. No, 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 you should play one more game. And what will happen as a result? As a result of this game, if they win, okay, I will return everything to them. Meaning, I'm not going to return Hastinapura, which is the original capital. Just their thing they can have, their wife they can have back. And what if they lose? If they lose, they have to go 12 years exile. They should not be anywhere. And 13-year exile. But out of that, 1 year should be spent anonymously, incognito. Nobody should know where they are. And after that, they can come out. And I will give them back the kingdom. Will you give them Hastinapura? Yeah, no problem. And inside he's thinking 13 years. First of all, I'll just go bribe the wild animals there and somebody will eat them up. If not, I will eat them up. And no problem at all. And he knew. And he had a lot of influence. He knew he could, even when they were in town, he was trying to torch them in that candle house. And so it was not much, it was a wonderful plan to leave them to the elements. That's why he didn't have to have his hands dirty, and plus he had spies all over. He could find out if they were alive or not, and then, make a sad face of breaking the news and then continue to encroach upon the kingdom. So he just thought, let's leave them to the elements. That way Mahabharata, Ramayana are very similar because of this exile piece. And this exile thing is all about, it was considered a horrible thing because it's, you just go into the forest. It's neither seen of nor heard. It's not like going camping and then sending SMS every 10 minutes. I'm enjoying solitude. The only thing missing is you. That is not the kind of a wilderness experience. Our days, the contemporary wilderness experience is just so tame. It's not wild at all. Everything is so choreographed, and even in the woods, every 100 feet there are bathrooms, and this is not this. Yeah. In the olden days, it's just between you and the lion. That's all it was. Yeah, there was only place for one on the mountain. You or the lion. Mountain lion or you. That was it. And all the time you had to be very careful, and where you built your quarters, you had to build everything from scratch. In Panchavati they found a grove, and Rama and Sita and Lakshmana, they built a cottage for themselves. So like this, they had to do everything. It was very difficult, and then you were not heard of ever at all. There was no way to communicate, and the post did not serve those areas. So this was seen as a terrible thing. That means they're gone. You don't know whether they'll come back. And also, even if they did come back, what kind of a health they would be after spending 12 years somewhere, 14 years in the case of Rama. And even if they survived, after they come back, they will not survive for too long. This was, it was a hard life. So nobody was happy with this whole terms of the last game of dice, because as Vidura is the another uncle from this side, Dhritarashtra and Pandu's brother. He was very dharmic. As Vidura pointed out, when this discussion was taking place, he said, look, this is a lose-lose terms. What are they losing? What are they losing of themselves? They stand to win no matter what. And if the Pandavas win this game, what will happen? They will still have the status quo. They will still have a kingdom to rule these baddies. If they lose the game, they will use up their thing also. So really, they are not losing anything. And to which Duryodhana says, you know what? That's because this game I'm offering to them as a favor to cancel out their loss in the last game. So yes, they should stand to lose more. These are my terms. Play if you want or don't play if you don't want. And if you don't play, we'll take away Draupadi, we'll take away your kingdom. So then they were kind of in a bind and they thought maybe our luck will change. Yeah, but with Shakuni's dice, no one's luck can change. So the die was cast. Literally, they lost and they were banished for 12 years. 12 years they roamed here and there, had lot of adventures. And that is when Arjuna meets Krishna. They both go and pacify a forest fire. That's how the friendship or the bond is forged. And then what else happens? So many things happen. And then Draupadi is given this, what is that? Akshaya Patra. And actually she already had it. She took one saucepan from the palace to cook in the forest. And that, with Krishna's grace, was converted into something that she could feed everybody all the time. I think another angry sage came to where they were living after the lunch was cleaned up and, wanted to be fed. And she was in a quandary. So Krishna said that, just cook in this and you will have enough food. So they had these kinds of adventures. And but all the time what they were doing was that Draupadi, I told you, was a very proud queen. And she refused to speak to any of them. She gave them the silent treatment. And she said, and she also did one more thing. She said, I'm not going to comb my hair until it is anointed with the blood of Dushasana's thigh. That I will, then only. Meaning, this dishonor of him trying to disrobe her had to be avenged. You have to understand, this is the thinking of the kingly people, the Kshatriyas. This is what it is. And so, naturally, the brothers also became very bloodthirsty because she's not speaking to them. And 12 years is a long time. I mean, she's speaking in monosyllables. She's not really having a relationship with any of them. And they're all dejected. Because it feels like a funeral every day. Meal times feel like a mourner's, wake. Even except that the wakes are a little more fun than this kind of a situation. and so they are at a loss. They don't know what to do. And so therefore they also start to get equally bloodthirsty. And each of them makes some horrible proclamations. Arjuna says, I'm going to kill Dushasana and Duryodhana. No, that's what Yudhishthira says. And then Arjuna's favorite target was Karna. And Sahadeva says, I'm going to kill the root cause of all this, Shakuni. And his son also, for good measure. So like this, all horrible proclamations of killing, this was I told you, it was a depressing time. But they were also stockpiling their ammunitions. This is where Arjuna went far and wide and went to Shiva's abode, Kailasa, and got this astra and did all these things. And in the process, he also incurred another curse. And it is, he may have incurred many, but this is the only one that is pertinent to our story. And what was this curse? He went to Indraloka. And as he was having a cup of tea with Indra, then one wonderful damsel came, Urvashi, heavenly nymph. Her name is Urvashi. And Urvashi saw him and fell in love at the first sight. And said, Arjuna, you are mine, There's no doubt about it. I've never, beheld anyone even 1/10 as handsome as you. And she composes a poem and on the spot, extempore, because she's all into song and dance. And she dances it out, sings it out, and everything. And Arjuna says, I'm not impressed, and rejects her. Rejects her advances. You don't do that to heavenly nymphs. Yeah. And they say, no, there is no fury like a woman who is scorned. And why did he reject her? Was she not beautiful? Yes, she was beautiful. Was she not lively? Yes, she was lively. Then why did he reject her? He had a very interesting theory. What did he say? He says, I have been reading the story of, because we have a lot of time in the forest, I have been reading the story of my ancestors. And you had an affair with one of my ancestors, Pururava. And therefore you are to me like my mother, Kunti. And just like I fall at her feet, I'm falling at your feet. And she said, what? I'm your mother? And she was very upset. She said that since my beauty had no impact on you, I curse you to become a eunuch. What's the use of your manhood? What's the use of being a man when you are not moved by the most beautiful thing in all the universes? And everybody said, no, this is too much. Well, once a curse taken cannot be, once a curse let out cannot be taken back. But of course, however, what can be done to it? It can be amended. So she said, all right, because everybody put pressure on her. And she said, all right. 1 year of your choosing, you will have to live like a eunuch. And this curse came in very handy. Yeah, because at the end of 12 years, when they had to go to incognito, how do you hide Arjuna? He is, shooting arrows and doing, and everybody sings his valor and he is so resplendent and everything. You can hide Yudhishthira, he is the quiet type, he's an introvert. He just keeps writing and reading books on dharma, easy to hide, Put him in front of a computer and you don't talk to him 3 months later. Yudhishthira was the current day definition, very pleasant, but current day definition of a nerd. Very studious, dharmic, that's what he was. Give him an iPad, with a dharma app, and then he'll be fine. He'll be perfectly okay. But Arjuna is an extrovert. Arjuna makes friends, Arjuna makes trouble, Arjuna keeps asking a lot of questions. You cannot hide Arjuna. Harder still is to hide who? Yeah. This 7'1.5" fellow, with a voracious appetite. He believed in large, frequent meals and still did not put an ounce of weight on. Because everything, he was just a warrior. He was this huge, girth. Huh?
Who did you say?
Bhima. Ah. How do you hide him? Thankfully, he knew how to cook. Yeah. By smashing 2 heads of cabbage together, he would make a curry. And he didn't cut, and all these delicacies were beyond him. So what to do? Put him in the palace dungeon to cook. Yeah. So they had a friend in the Maharaja of Virat. And so he gave them shelter. He was a little doubtful about Bhima. He looked at him and he said, I'll get a bad name because he will be outed in 2 seconds. Because if you didn't feed him on time, he would go begging to other houses and he would create problems. He had a very high metabolism. And so, what to do? And Arjuna assures him, no, you put him as the head cook. So he'll never come out. He'll just be in the basement, in the palace somewhere, cooking. Then Virat Raja says, all right. And then he says, Arjuna is also not easy to hide. And suddenly he looks, Arjuna has this female voice and has turned into half a woman. And then what? he is kept in the Antahpura. Antahpura means what? The quarters, the area where the princesses and the queens live, to teach them the fine arts. Because he already knew music, dance, everything, And Yudhishthira picked up a book and went somewhere. Nakula and Sahadeva were not a problem. And so the 13th year was spent like this, incognito. Duryodhana had a doubt, because he heard that there was very good food being cooked in Virat Pradesha. And he heard that, Yudhishthira was, has started to take satsangs. This is this is not really true. But Yudhishthira had started to take satsangs on dharma. Perhaps he heard that. Or it was perhaps the smell of the cooking that gave it away. So he tried to do some kind of a border skirmish. He tried to engage, because he was always, like a chicken which is, scratching the ground. He was scratching the ground for war, scratching the ground to destroy these people. So what he did was he made some cows disappear belonging to Virat Raja, abducted the cows, and then near the border, claiming that they had come on his side, they were eating his grass. And then Sahadeva, who was the astrologer in the family, looked at the, what do they look at? Panchangam, and said, what is Panchangam? The calendar.
Almanac?
Yeah, almanac, calendar, the Hindu calendar, the lunar calendar. He looked at the Panchanga and said, actually today is the day. We can come out. It's done. But it was one of those days which was it has 2 dates in one day. In Hindu calendar, anything is possible. Like Dwadashi, Trayodasi, like today. And Dwadashi on top of Trayodasi. I think it was not it was actually Dvitiya on top of Prathama, like this. So then Arjuna said, Yippee, I'm tired of this, wearing saris for a year. And he threw off his sari and waged into, and had a full on, he protected the Virat Raja and then secured back the cows. And Duryodhana was waiting behind the bushes just for this. He says, aha, you have been outed, you have to go back to 12 years more of hiding. That was the condition, if they were outed. And what does he say? And Sahadeva comes and says, no, according to our calendar. And this is common in India. There is one day they do one thing, and then some people said they will swear by the fact that in our area, this day is coming one day later or one day earlier. Like between the Tamil calendar and the Telugu calendar, there will be always one day different. Yeah. It's funny, but that's how it is. So then that was resolved, and these people came out back into the open, and they asked nicely, are you going to give us back the kingdom like the terms of here is the contract. Yes, it has been through 12 years in the forest, but and the parchment may be not very nice, but here is the contract. You can read, it's all typewritten, sealed, signed and notarized by the elders who were present and witnessed. This is what you are supposed to do. And Duryodhana says, I changed my mind. I changed my mind, not happening. And then Krishna knew this is not good. So Krishna was sent as a mediator, because otherwise because all these people had made all these horrible proclamations of killing each other. And the proclamations are important because this was not Kali Yuga still. And that Kali Yuga, before Kali Yuga, any proclamation has a power. We talked about this morning. Like when you say something, because you are, included in the whole, your speech is included in the whole, and you make a difference, you have an impact. That's why you have to say and try to think, as much as possible, nice things. Yeah, because sometimes it happens. Like all these negative fantasies that one has about oneself and others, it could come to fruition. You don't know. Sometimes, the time could align with the thought and make it happen if that sankalpa, the intentionality is very strong. And especially in those other yugas, the intentionality really, because people led, other than the types of Duryodhana and his family, people led dharmic lives. So Krishna was very worried. So even, and he said there's going to be fratricide, all these people killing each other within the family. And so he was very happy to be appointed as the mediator. Yudhishthira requests him and says, on no account, because Yudhishthira does not like conflict. Not that he's not able to follow through and fight, but he doesn't wish to engage in it. He hates conflict. He doesn't want to do. He's a pacifist, really. And Krishna goes and says, all right, give them their kingdom. Nope, I won't. Here, Krishna, you've come after a long time. Have some samosas. Krishna says, I did not come here to eat samosas. I want answers. I've come as a mediator. I'm in my official capacity. I didn't come here to eat and be wined and dined. I came here to negotiate. So what are you going to do? Why are you aware that you are going against this contract? He says, what contract? I don't recognize anything. Oh, 13 years. Oh, it's been such a long time, I don't remember anything. Come on, you do remember, don't you remember? Draupadi's dishonored, the second game of dice. Yeah, it's all coming back. But you know what? I changed my mind. I may have said that. That was then. This is now. And things have changed. Times have changed. And you have to change with the times. Actually, what had happened is that he had been all powerful, nobody to ask him anything for 13 years. He had power corrupts. That's what happened. He was already corrupt, and now he was absolutely corrupt. Because somebody said that. What was that? Power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And so he was totally in that, he was not in the mood to negotiate. Then Krishna said, give them back Indraprastha. Let them, they will be fine. He says, no, that's mine. Give them, 5 regions. Nope, not happening. Give them 1 region with 5 principalities. Nope. Give them 1 principality with 5 villages. No. Give them 1 village with 5 houses. No. Here, have another samosa. Give them 1 house with 5 rooms. No. Give them 1 room with 5 corners. No. And then he says, I'm tired of this saying no to you. Because I have nothing against you. And you're putting me in a difficult situation, and I'm a friendly guy. So let's cut to the chase and make this very clear. I'm not going to give them as much land as is needed to even occupy by the tip of a pin, a needle. Meaning what? I'm not going to give any land. Krishna, who is Bhagavan, had to beat a retreat. And this is very troublesome for a number of Westerners and even for, people from the Indian heritage. Like, how can Bhagavan not make this happen? Bhagavan should be able to do anything and everything. So why does Bhagavan come back hanging the head in shame and announcing to Kunti here, saying, I was not able to prevent the war is going to take place. Wow! Here we have to see that here Bhagavan represents not some entity with with some intentions, but one's own karma phala. So it is the karma phala. The war is brought on because there was some little bit of karma must have been there. And also it is the flouting, the blatant flouting and the abuse of Duryodhana's free will. So what can Bhagavan do? Give him karma phala? Yes, but in that moment that free will is being flouted. So you see, this is what happens. So even when Bhagavan is the messenger, and Bhagavan gave many, many ways, And at that time also some bad omens were seen, things in the sky, and all these things which are considered bad omens were seen, and Krishna knew that the war was inevitable, because sometimes that's what it takes for people to learn. And so then we find that the war was declared. There is a dharma in the war too. It's not these drones and dropping bombs on people. No, it was openly declared, and they would meet at this place. They would fight from dawn to night time, dusk, and then they would go back to their tents, and then start the next day. This was the whole thing, and the war was declared. And now the Duryodhana, who had been making friends and influencing people. Duryodhana, despite his faults, was a very generous fellow. Yeah. And especially if it was other people's money, he gave lots of it to everybody. So here it was the coffers of the state, which he would just bribe everybody. And he would say, here some pearls, here some precious stone, here some gold coins. And that is why in the Dhyana Shloka, he is seen as Avartini, that undercurrent. Duryodhana Avartini. Avartini means what? The undercurrent in the what is that called? Under the water, which you don't see. Riptide, undercurrent, whatever it's called. Riptide. That riptide, which rips you apart, which is not seen. Even the most accomplished swimmers can come under its spell and get caught. It gives you leg cramp, or it just sucks you in. And that is why Duryodhana is called this riptide, because he sucked people in by playing, tunes on their vulnerabilities and taking advantage of them. So he either frightened them into submission, all the neighboring rajas, and then he would oblige them to fight and put them in such a situation that they would have to fight for him. So Duryodhana's army was this motley crew of terrified people, and who had just been recruited yesterday, because when the war was the town criers went with their dindima and said, what did they say? If you don't join the war, if you don't enlist, your head will be cut off. So these kinds of frightened people made up the front lines, and then the kings behind them in their chariots and elephants and horses, they were all people who were obligated. First Duryodhana would create a fix in their life, and then fix himself to take them out of the fix. And by bribes of money and help, he had enslaved the minds of all these other kings, Kripa and all these people. So they all fought for him, not because they believed in the cause. Either they were frightened or they were obliged. This is what his army was. And so he had this impressive army. But was that enough for him? No. He wanted Krishna's army too. He wanted that. And so he went to see Krishna, to say, I want the army. Only one slight problem. Arjuna was there first. But he, with all his pride, stood at the head. Krishna was taking a nap, as though, and Arjuna respectfully stood at the feet, and this fellow stood at the head. Of course, naturally, actually Duryodhana came first. Yeah, Duryodhana went first, and he was disconcerted to see Krishna also, Arjuna also walking in the door. And Arjuna stood at the feet. Duryodhana in pride stood at the head, breathing over him. When is he going to wake up? When is he going to wake up? Because it's a papa to wake up a sleeping person. You have to wait till they wake up. And then what? Krishna's nap was done. His eyes were open. Who do you see if you are sleeping? You see what is right in front of you. He sees Arjuna. Oh, Arjuna, you are here. How nice. Ah, I came first. A voice says from the head, Oh, Duryodhana, you are also here. Okay. He knew that they had not come for tea. He knew they both wanted something from him. Anybody else would have been in a quandary. Not Krishna. He was the master diplomat. So he said, yes, you may have been here first, but I saw Arjuna first. So he gets the first chance to ask whatever he wants. And Duryodhana panicked because he thought, oh, that army, because Krishna had this army that was invincible. They could only kill each other. No one else could kill them. This was the invincible Yadava army. Duryodhana panicked, thinking that Arjuna wanted that army. And if he could pray, he would have prayed at this time. Oh God, if you are there, please, let him not ask for the army. And Arjuna's request was simple. I want you to be with me. Oh, him, Duryodhana, who was waiting to exhale. Finally, exhaled. Oh, this is nothing. He's asking for Krishna. And Krishna said, make no mistake. I'm like Switzerland. I'm not going to pick up a weapon, fight, and do all these things. If you want me, then I'll be with you, but I'm not going to fight. So you want a non-fighting me? Or do you want a fighting army? Fighting army, fighting army, fighting army. Duryodhana said. Non-fighting you, Arjuna said. You just be with us. See, Arjuna was not a student at this time. Arjuna did not say, I want to be taught by you. He didn't even recognize him as a Jnani or as Bhagavan. But he knew that this was an exceptional person, he respected him tremendously. That much he knew. With a lot of caliber, and I must not lose out on this. He knew that. And he knew that I have to choose Krishna, even though he may not know why. Both of them went away happy, shaking hands, and Duryodhana was already having making a guest list for his celebratory party and drawing up the menu. Because he thought this war is done, especially if I have the Yadava army. These Pandavas, what are they going to do? Sitting in the forest and doing satsangs and kirtans, they would not even know how to fight. All their skills have rusted, And 1 year, playing instruments. What has he done? Nothing. And this one Bhima getting hot and fanning himself in the kitchen. Nothing. What will they do in this war? And he already had said, this is how the palace will be decorated. His mind was spinning. And these are the peoples, I'll invite the Rajas, I will become a world conqueror. And then I will, marry a few more women. And then I will do this. And, wouldn't it be nice to serve these kinds of foods? And all these things. He had already planned the victory party. And we should get some wine flown in from other countries. He had already... He had already said all this. He had planned. And then what? Arjuna also went away very happy. And his was a different happiness. His was the confidence of being in the right and having Krishna with him. And this itself in the Mahabharata is very metaphorical, as is the Mahabharata. And here are certain things. I'd like to spend some time outlining what are the allegories here. So the allegories are, some of them are hard to miss. What is that? The battlefield. Where is the battlefield? Kurukshetra. Where is Kurukshetra? In which Kshetra? Right here. Kshetra means field. Yeah. Kurukshetra. Where is this Kurukshetra? Both within and without. In fact, to recognize it without, you have to have it within. So Kurukshetra means the place where the battle is fought. And so this is the mad mind of the jiva here. This is all, that is why it's called itihasa. Itihasa. It's kind of a song and poetry talking about how it was, what happened. So it's like a historical poetry. And then in this historical poetry, it also functions as an allegory for the human condition. And so we have to see a few things are worthy of noting. The first one is that the teaching takes place in the battlefield. The teaching does not take place as one's spiritually romantic imagination would have. Oh, I'll be surrounded by greenery and I will sit on a tuft of grass, and the teacher will also be seated on a mound of grass, and then there won't be any ants or cockroaches, and then the birds will be chirping. And then the more I understand the Upanishads, the chirping of the birds, I will also start to understand, and I will become one with the squirrels. Nothing will fly away from me. And as I am studying the Upanishads and meditating, I will be in such oneness that one bird will be sitting on one shoulder and another bird on the other shoulder, like Saint Francis. I will be surrounded by everything and be in that total oneness. This is not how the teaching takes place. Teaching takes place when you are getting ready for some kind of a conflict, or when you are already so horribly conflicted that you don't know what to do, you cannot retreat, you cannot go forward, and you are stuck in between a hot pan and the hot oil. The fire, what is that?
Frying pan and fire.
Thank you. Frying pan means it should contain the oil, otherwise it's not fun. Between the hot oil and the fire, which shall I choose? Let me think. There is no time to think. Each one is worse than the other. Each one is equally. And there's another thing. What is that between a rock and the devil and deep sea? Between rock and hard place. Rock is also a hard place. And so these are all the metaphors, made by people who were in similar situations. That is when one is ready for the teaching. Not like, after retirement, I'll have a little tree house and I will sit there overlooking the mountains. 1 hour of tea, another hour of Upanishad, and then sleep. This is spiritual fantasy, spiritual romanticism. This won't happen. Maybe in the books it happens, but it is very likely that it's not going to happen to you, because it... So here, the Kurukshetra, which is of course a horrible situation. I'm not saying that it does not externally exist. It exists externally. Here is the Kurukshetra, this battlefield, and also there is a place right outside of Delhi. Indraprastha is there, Kurukshetra, all these places are there. Kurukshetra is outside Delhi. On the way to Rishikesh, you meet Kurukshetra. So, it's not that there is not an external factor to it, but that should not cause distress. And what causes the distress is the internalization of that which is external. Yes, there is a usurper and a terrorist called Duryodhana, and he has to be brought to book. And it is fighting is my department, and it is my department to restore dharma. And I should be able to do it. No, even though 12 years he was hopping on one leg, wanting a vial of blood from Dushasana's thigh to anoint Draupadi's hair. He was so bloodthirsty. And then what happened? Krishna came to Arjuna's side. He said, I'm not going to fight. And he couldn't just hang about in the battlefield. So he said, I'll drive the chariot just for fun. And he was driving the chariot. And Arjuna forgot that he had asked Krishna to do him a favor. And we will see this verse. Senayor ubhayor madhye ratham sthapaya me achyuta yavadetan niriksheham yoddhukaman avasthitan kairmaya saha yoddhavyam asmin rana samudyame. He says, hey driver, James. He thinks he's the chauffeur. Hey, you, Achyuta, take my chariot. Me ratha. Me means mine. My chariot. Sthapaya. Put it. Where? Senayoho Ubhayoho Madhye. In between the two armies. Why? Yavat, because from where? From whence? Etam nirikshye aham, so that I can examine and look. Do an inspection. Niriksha means inspection. So that I can inspect. What? Yodhukaman avasthitan, those miserable allies of Duryodhana. So I can look at them and mentally spit on each of them, their faces. And see, may frighten them just by looking at them. And then see, Kaihi maya saha yodhavyam, who is it who dares to fight with me in this war? This was his attitude. And what does Krishna do? He says, I, Arjuna, no problem, sir. I'll take you there. He takes him there, but he cleverly positions the chariot where all the elders are standing. Uncles, teacher, grandpapa, Bhishma, everybody. And Arjuna hears a strange knocking sound. Who is knocking? His own knees are knocking. And this is the conflict. You see, that conflict is there. But what is the conflict here is in his own mind. These are my people and somehow I cannot kill them. Without my people I will not be able to enjoy my kingdom. And so these are my people and somehow they should have, this is the double standards. It's called Dharma Sankata. Anybody who violates Dharma, I have no problem. Just because a few cows from Virat Raja's, kingdom were taken, I pounced on them and offed off all the people who dare do this. But when it comes to my people, there's a different set of rules. You see, this is the conflict. This is the inner Mahabharata. The outer Mahabharata, nobody is saying that it's all in the mind. No, it's not all in the mind. This inner Mahabharata, this is what we have to see it as an allegory. This is what is called the conflict of Dharma. What is correct and why Dharma cannot have double standards. There is only one Dharma. There is not that Dharma for your family members. It's okay if they steal. It's okay if they lie. It's okay if they cheat. It's okay if they defraud others. But nobody else should defraud me. Why? Why can't you be so generous to other people? So this is the conflict faced, by Arjuna. And so therefore, that is what becomes the fertile ground for teaching. Not the conflict itself, but the recognition of this conflict and the seeking of the help. Because this is exactly what happens to Arjuna. First he talks himself, and he just trails off because he cannot even finish the sentence in the first chapter. He just his words trail off into the dust because he knows he's not making sense. He's just rambling out of anxiety. And he's giving a lecture to Krishna on Dharma. That shows how much Dharma is on his mind. He is conflicted between the truth of what his thing is to do, what is his duty here. Because this is not like that any battle, once you say, there is no successful retreat. And certainly not in the Vedic battle, there is no successful retreat. Either you flatten them or you and come back, or you get flattened and go elsewhere, heaven, etc. And then what? Or you don't engage in the war at all. He could have told Krishna, yes, that fellow is not budging, let him have the whole kingdom. We were fine in the what's its name, in the forest. We'll go back there, or we have made friends with Virat Raja, we'll go and sit with him, or we'll find something to do on our own. We don't need this. He could have told. But no, he didn't tell. He was chafing and he was chomping at the bit to get into this war. And having got into the war, he suddenly wants to retreat. And he's making a mental calculation. How far is Rishikesh from Kurukshetra? He's thinking. Because I can go and wear some orange dresses because I don't want anything at all. Yeah. I don't want kingdom. I don't want victory. First of all, I don't want victory. And victory is for whose sake? For the sake of regaining the kingdom. Who wants the kingdom? I don't want the kingdom. If I can't have my people, if I have to kill my people to get my kingdom back, I'd rather not have the kingdom. Well, too little, too late. Why did you wait till the conch shells declaring the war were blown on both the sides? And why did you blow your conch shell louder than everyone else? Yeah. He blew, it was like a death cry. Yes. And what was the name of his conch shell? Devadatta. Yes. And Devadatta, the poor conch shell, needed some noise cancelling headphones. He blew it so loudly, he was all into the war. He was beating his chest and doing all kinds of manly things people do before the war. Energy drinks he was drinking and, yeah. And what is that? Oiling his muscles so that they show off nicely, so that the enemy sees the bicep and runs away. This is all he was doing. This is the conflict, you see. This is the very conflict. So the Mahabharata is there because the dharma there has to be universal. This is the first part of this allegory, is this inner Mahabharata. And why does that happen? Because dharma is not understood. Dharma is universal. It cannot be one set of, dharma for you, another set for me. And if it's a religious, like sometimes they have traditions, religious traditions, where there is one set of dharma for the followers, for the insiders, and another set of dharma for the people outside. Everybody is a brother. Who is a brother? The one who belongs to the same tradition. And what about the people who don't belong? You either kill them or convert them. You either make them or force them to become brothers. You convert them. Or if they refuse to convert, you kill them. This is one set of, code of conduct for the believers and another set for the non-believers. This is not dharma. And dharma is not really a code of conduct. It is that which is sensed. It is a normative structure in society that is already sensed, just like gravity. Like you don't have to tell the baby monkey living on the treetop that has just been born. You don't have to take a gravity class. You have to hold on to your mummies. The kittens are like this. The kitten is like this. The mother holds on and takes it place to place. But the baby monkey doesn't have this privilege. Yeah. Because the mother monkey doesn't spend time in maternity leave. Yeah. As soon as she gives birth, she jumps on to one tree and from there to another tree. And if this monkey has to survive, because it needs the milk, it needs the mother, it has to catch on for dear life. And you've seen this in movies and wherever, animal sanctuaries, etc. And there's nothing more strong than that's why it's called monkey grip. The grip of the baby holding on to the mother monkey. Monkey grip. It will not leave. Who tells it, you have to hold on to mummy, because if mummy goes, you will fall. It doesn't even know the meaning of fall. What's fall? That means you will die. What's die? You will not be there. Oh, is that a bad thing? Yes, it's a very bad thing. Nobody has to tell the monkey that. It senses gravity and it holds on. It's instinctive. Dharma is like that. Dharma is like that. It is sensed in every heart. I don't want to be cheated. I don't want to be defrauded. I don't want my possessions to be taken from me. Even every thief says that. Even though his possessions are your possessions, but still he will say that. And then, but what is the incentive to follow dharma? What is the reason the father or the mother will tell the child, you must not tell lies? Because the child will ask, why? Why I shouldn't tell lies? An impatient parent might say, because you will get caught. Is that the reason not to tell lies? Because you'll get detected? You know? So it's one gets into, as a parent, one gets into some parent traps, awkward situations. No, I'll never be detected. That's what they are going to tell. I'll do it in a way that it's undetectable. You don't know. I'm very good at this. Yes. So what are you going to say now? So obviously that's not a good answer to give. You shouldn't lie because you'll be detected. You shouldn't lie because that's not the done thing. That's also not a good answer because everybody else is doing it. Mom, Dad, they look at them. They're getting away with it too. Why are you telling me not to do it? Well, because it is the right thing to do. Beyond this you can't really say much else. But this is where, you have to encourage the person to see that you don't want other people to do that to you. That is what you have to tell. Would you like it if what you are about to do to someone, if that person did it to you, would you have that same magnanimity? If they also went undetected? No, I'll be outraged, I'll be upset. That's why you shouldn't do it to others. But even if I'm not doing it, other people are doing it, never mind. You still, because you are part of this order. The dharmic order is there, and every single person counts. The ocean also is made drop by drop. Every drop makes the ocean. So don't think that you don't matter and your actions don't matter. And your actions bring on immediate results, in the sense that people will respect you for your choices and for your strength of character. And that is what is going to make you more popular than if you had a few, gadgets or some cards that these teenagers collect, whatever it is. That is what is going to, really that's a lasting way to earn respect from people around you, elders and youngsters alike. That's what you have to tell them. And this is the thing. This is how dharma functions, is that I don't want this to happen to me, and the only way I can assure that is myself not behaving in those ways. And then how does this equilibrium, or this love for this equilibrium, how does it get disturbed? It gets disturbed by ragadveshas. That's the whole thing. I can see cognitively, I can appreciate dharma. I know dharma. I want to follow dharma. But the pressures of the ragadvesha sits, and creates a pressure cooker kind of situation that makes one blow one stop, or makes one go against the very values that one has enshrined for oneself. So that's why it works, because these values are universal. Nobody wants to be mugged or bugged. Nobody says, I think I'm going to enjoy being mugged. Nobody says that. Because this is not human nature. So based on the human nature of wanting everybody to be nice to me, so that naturally I return the favor. If that's what my want is, how are you going to enforce this want? I'm nice to everybody. And what is this nice? It is a place of no conflict, peace, shanti and compassion. These are all the positive universal values which are sometimes gained by not doing certain things. So this is what it is. And this, everybody is dharmic. Even the person who is in the jail is naturally dharmic. But what has happened? That system of values has been disrupted by socialization or by repeat offences. And the repeat offences have squashed that voice of dharma so much that they are not in touch with it, they have dissociated with it. In other words, the doer-thinker split is so much. The thinker knows what is correct, what is not, at the level of the pramata, at the level of the knower. But the doer is different. The knower-doer split is what causes adharma. And so here Arjuna could write a treatise on dharma, and he in fact does in the first chapter. Very selective treatise, but nonetheless a treatise. And he knows, but he is not able to implement it. And he, for the first time in his life, he feels like retreating from a battle. Never has he done. And he knows this is danger. And this is the first thing about the allegory that I was telling you, is to see the battlefield as one's own battlefield. And people have done this from, because it's a example that's hard to miss. The battlefield is the raging ragadveshas within. So there is an inner Duryodhana, there is an inner Dushasana, there is an inner grabber, an inner Ragi, inner Dveshi. And these are the people that need to be contented with first. I have to contend with them first before I can even get to the place of neutrality to fight this war. And then two other imageries we have to see before we begin the text, and we'll do that when? Day after tomorrow, Tuesday. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.